Okay. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Elaine D'Agostino, and I'm so honored to be here with you tonight to share my story. So I just wanted to start by sharing a bit about myself. I'm from Mishpicon First Nation, but I grew up in North Bay. I just graduated from Queen's Faculty of Law about a month ago with my Juris Doctorate. And before that, I did my undergraduate degree at Western University in Health Sciences. So I kind of made a bit of a switch from science to law. Outside of academics, culture has always been a huge thing for me on both sides of my family, my dad being Italian and my mom being Anishinaabe. My grandfather on my mom's side is a residential school survivor, so he was displaced from community, and my mom worked really, really hard to reconnect with culture. Myself, I felt pretty uncomfortable with my indigeneity for a long time. And I took a year off in between my undergrad and law school, and that's when I started going to ceremony again and reconnecting. Um, and outside of that, I find a lot of balance from being on the land. It's what's grounded me and definitely kept me sane throughout law school and this past month where I had to study for the bar exams and take those, which I'll touch on later, but that was a very stressful experience. And then I just want to share some of the land-based knowledge activities that I like to do. This first picture is me and my friend Taylor. We harvested some birch bark. I think we made baskets out of it. That was a couple years ago. This is swamp mint. I don't know the proper name for it, but uh, the name tells it all. You know, you find it near a swamp. I usually harvest it probably around this time a year. Like it grows till late summer. And then I just dry it out and it makes a really nice minty tea. And then this is me bothering a turtle. I love turtles. And then circling back to law. So why law? I've always advocated for Indigenous rights. If you know me, you know that when I first started my Twitter account and all throughout high school and my undergrad, I was a little Twitter warrior. If I saw any hint of ignorance, I physically could not be silent. I think it's because I watched my grandfather's silence and I wanted to be a voice for him and, you know, for people that weren't able to speak up. And then also, there is a huge lack of Indigenous representation in law school. I know my year that just graduated had the largest amount of Indigenous students in Queen's law history, which was 8 people, including myself. And last year, there was not one Indigenous student in first year. So this is an ongoing issue. And it's why I definitely understood my position here as being privileged to be a law student, an opportunity that our ancestors were deliberately excluded from, and as you can see, an opportunity that our communities continue to be excluded from. Also, I want to make it clear when I say we need more representation, I don't mean just in Indigenous law. We need Indigenous people in corporate law, in environmental, in construction, in family. There's no limit. We need our people everywhere. So whatever your passion is, like, go for it. And then I just wanted to go over the actual application process because I know it's scary and a lot. So in Ontario, there's 8 law schools, and each school's application is slightly different. So this one is specific to Queen's, and at Queen's, there's 4 admission categories. So the first one being the Indigenous peoples category, the second general category, the third Black student applicant category, and the fourth the access category. I'm going to focus in on the Indigenous category because that's what I applied through, and I'm hoping that's what other Indigenous students apply through. I do know some Indigenous students that decided to go through the general category because they felt like they would feel that they got in just based on their identity. And I can understand that, but I encourage you to definitely step outside of that mindset. Underrepresentation is real. As I said, there's literally no Indigenous students in first year right now. And so that category is there for a reason. So the contents of the application itself, first, identification with communities. So if you're status, you literally just need to show your status card. If you're non-status, just a letter from your band confirming that you're a member. The next thing, CV, resume, it's just an overview of your employment and volunteer work history, which you can begin in high school thinking about that. They really are just looking for extremely well-rounded people. So, I mean, I have serving jobs on there. I had like conservation authority where I cut grass. Like they just want to see that you were out there doing stuff. I personally didn't know I wanted to go to law school until my second year of undergrad. So you don't need to do things completely relevant to law. It just, again, like you're showing that you're around a well-rounded person. So in university, though, like when I realized I did want to pursue this, I joined clubs that did outreach to address the homelessness crisis in London. And then I joined faculty committees, which led me to be the Faculty of Health Sciences Indigenous Committee's co-chair, which really, really helped with the next application requirement, which is the letters of reference. So from doing that committee work, to the professors wrote my academic references for me. And then being an Indigenous applicant, you need a personal reference from somebody in your community. Personally, because I grew up in North Bay and my mom and I only go back to our res, which is like right outside of Wawa, maybe once a year for the elder youth gathering. I didn't really feel comfortable asking anyone from there, so I asked a knowledge keeper from Nipissing who I'd known since I was a kid, and he wrote a lovely reference for me. The fourth thing, GPA. Yeah, so you can apply to law school with any undergraduate degree. So like I said, I did health sciences. My number one advice is choose something that you enjoy so you can get the highest GPA possible. That's just like the reality of it. And then LSAT score, everyone is very scared of the LSAT. I was scared of the LSAT. It's not that bad, really. I recommend you take an LSAT course. You can buy one. U of T also offers a free course for Indigenous students. And you can take the test multiple times and it only shows one score. It's really not as stressful as it seems. And then the last requirement is the personal statement. So my advice with this one is it's like you're pleading your first case and you're trying to plead why you should be a law student at this law school. And then I just wanted to touch on funding briefly. These are the main three. There's obviously many more, and I think the ISC actually has an Indigenous bursaries search tool. So outside of this, but I love Inspire that every year they are so great. Okay, and then I just wanted to break down first year. So just the curriculum itself, the schedule is pre-picked for you. So it includes all introductory courses, which is like criminal law, tort law, property, contracts, public law, constitutional law. There's like an intro to legal skills. It's like a writing course. I found first year incredibly hard because my undergrad was in sciences and I had no understanding of what the law looked like, how it worked. So I was learning how to learn the law plus the content, whereas a lot of My classmates had taken a degree in law. Their undergraduate was in law, so they already had a little bit of a leg up. Outside of just the content being hard, 1L burnout is really real. This year challenged me the most out of all my years in law school, mentally especially. The reality is you have an overwhelming amount of work, which I had never experienced to that extent before. You literally have no free time. I'm not trying to scare anyone. You can make it through for sure. And when you do have free time, all you want to do is sleep. So it's very, very isolating. In that, I also was balancing being in a new place and having imposter syndrome, which everybody in first year struggles with. You're surrounded by a bunch of people that are incredibly smart and you are like, why do I deserve to be here? But you definitely do deserve to be here. There's a lot of opportunities that I wanted to touch on. There's upper year tutors and resources and clubs. You have to get involved. The burnout that I'm talking about, it's why it's so necessary to find community. Um, I went into law school as an extremely social person, but I made the mistake of living alone and I found it really hard to connect with my classmates because I was stuck in my section. This is how Queen's works. Not every law school is like this, but I was with a core group of students for the entirety of my first year and I I just didn't connect with them. And I also ignored countless emails from Indigenous Student Services because I just had no energy to do anything. But don't be like me. That's my number one advice. You can take a break. It's worth it to take a break, and you can make the energy to find community. There's so many resources within your school to connect you to other Indigenous students. There's clubs, there's designated spaces on campus. Had I done this earlier, I really think that first year would not have been as difficult for me. This is one of the opportunities that I did not ignore though in first year, thankfully. I had the opportunity to go to the Law Students Conference held at Bor-Alaskan. It was on languages, land, and sovereignties, revitalizing Indigenous legal orders. And not to name drop, but if anyone can recognize who's in this picture, it's Saul Memakwa. We got to watch him speak actually, which was really, really cool. And now I see him on my TikTok For You page like regularly. He's very cool. Anyway, this conference was really important to me because I also got to bond with other students who were invited. So other Indigenous students that were not in my section, and I hadn't had the chance to meet before. And, Madison is right beside me. She became my lifelong friend, and it changed my perspective and mindset on the next 2 years. Here's my friends again. So this is 2L and 3L. I went into 2L with a different mindset. It's because you also understand the workload, the expectations, how to prepare, and you come to terms with the fact that you simply cannot finish everything. You learn what to prioritize and when to take a break. You really don't need to do it all, which I did not understand in first year, and I burnt myself out. Also, 2L and 3L are more fun because you can pick what interests you. There are a couple required upper year courses, but for the majority, you choose your classes. And so I have always been drawn to Indigenous law and family law. So I took every course that I could in those areas. In family law, I took family law, obviously. And then I took an individual supervised paper with my family law professor, and I wrote that on Bill C-92, which is the Indigenous Child Welfare Act that was passed in 2019. I also did a family law placement. And then I just wanted to mention this briefly, but the TRC call to action number 28 states, we call upon law schools in Canada to require all law students to take a course in Aboriginal people and the law. So up until this year, Queen's was the only law school in Ontario that did not implement a mandatory course. But I am happy to report that they finally implemented one into the curriculum for this upcoming academic year. maybe like 10 years late, but like it's here, so that's good. And then for Indigenous law courses, I was able to take Aboriginal child welfare, and this is actually how I found my articling firm, which I'll touch on that later. I took Indigenous Lived Experience of Canadian Law. This was a really, really cool course. My final project was a beading project. So I actually beaded the outline of the survey of my res, what we were supposed to get originally in the treaty, and then the land that we did get. There was a huge like land claim settlement in the early 2000s that settled in 2008. It was really cool to have the opportunity to have a final project in my law school on that, and to be able to bead in class. I also took Indigenous treaty law, which that was the course where I really learned Indigenous legal traditions the most. Outside of that, it's like when you're talking about Indigenous law, they're talking about the Constitution and they're not talking about anything to do with legal traditions. And then the last one, I took this past semester. It was a law camp learning Anishinabek law from the land. So we actually got to go stay in cabins for 4 days. And it was a mix of having different Indigenous legal scholars come in and speak with us, and then we would go out and learn from the land. We did a lot of different activities. We made maple syrup. I made cedar tea for everyone because I was really sick. We had fires every night. So much to talk about, but I don't want to go over time, so I'll just continue on. I also joined ILSA, so every law school has an Indigenous Law Student Association. We had weekly beading circles at 4D, which is the Indigenous Student Center for all Queen students, like undergraduate included and graduate. And then there's further opportunities that I took advantage of, different clubs. I took I was on Women in Law. I think those are the only two clubs I did, was ILSA, Women in Law, and then I did sit on student council for a year. Some things I didn't do was exchange. I really, really recommend going on exchange. And I know MyRes, you can get funding for that. So look into it, speak with your education coordinator. Like, these are opportunities that you can take that are fully funded. Yeah, okay, let's move on. Okay, so like I said at the beginning, I just graduated in May, and then I had to jump into studying for the bar exams. I just wrote the second one on June 18th. So I am finally free. I've been free for like the last 6 days, which has been amazing. Anyway, so the LSO, which is the Law Society of Ontario, has 3 requirements for you to become a licensed lawyer after you've graduated. So the first is obtaining a Juris Doctorate, so going to law school. And then afterwards, you have to pass both the barrister and the solicitor's exams. So that's what I just wrote. And then you have to article for 10 months. So I just mentioned in the previous slide that I took the Aboriginal Child Welfare course. It was a seminar course. So that means it was just one weekend. And the professor actually was a lawyer from Toronto. And I had the privilege of meeting her and taking this course, and that's what I'm going to be articling for. And I've really always been drawn to family law and Indigenous law, and this firm specializes in Indigenous child protection, mostly in Ontario, but they do take out of province like Manitoba. I've seen them take cases in BC as well, and we actually get to fly out to these communities. Anyway, like I said, they specialize in Indigenous child protection, which is my dream position because it's the perfect interplay between family law and Indigenous law. Outside of legal representation, the firm also does funding assistance. So the government offers different funding applications. They're super complex and difficult. So lawyers at this firm will go through the process with different First Nations. They also do strategic planning, which is helping create child welfare plans with communities. That paper that I wrote and I mentioned like slides ago on Bill C-92, it offers Indigenous communities to be able to come up with their own child welfare legislation that is binding on everyone. It's superior to federal law. So it's really, really cool opportunity for Indigenous communities to take, although it is extensively complex. And so this law firm goes in and like helps Indigenous communities with the process of legislating their welfare plan. And they also offer band representative training. So band representatives are those that they're people that go in and represent the children's best interest in court. It's like through that legislation that I had just mentioned, it's mandatory for band representatives to be present at any Indigenous child welfare proceeding. And then they also offer policy and law development. So I'm very, very excited for this opportunity. And then this is what I really hope the main takeaway is of my presentation for everyone. My mom has always taught me that education is the tool to escape poverty. It's how she escaped. She was the first person to attend university, to graduate, to attain a master's degree. She's the only person in her family to do that. And I just want to reiterate that law school is here. It is possible. It's a long journey, but it is more accessible than ever with the funding available and with the guidance of Indigenous legal professionals that are already working in the field. And I just want to say right now, like I am more than happy to help anybody with any applications, any questions that they have. I just really want to increase Indigenous voices in the legal system. So I'm here to help in any way that I can. And then the law camp that I attended this past semester, I decided to write a journal as my final project to future Indigenous students. And this was part of my conclusion. And so it's what I'd like to end my presentation with. So I want to remind you that there will be moments of discomfort, of doubt, and of grief, but there will also be moments of clarity, of laughter, of community, and of deep connection. Trust those moments, listen to them, let them guide you, let the land guide you. I have learned that this path is not only about becoming a lawyer, it's about becoming yourself more authentically. So that's the end of my presentation. Chi-miigwech to all the organizers and the attendees. And if there's any questions, please let me know.
Yeah, we have Lucy and Levi online. If either of you have any questions to ask Elaine, we'll give you a chance to ask now. But if you don't have any questions, thank you for presenting, Elaine. It was great to hear what you do and what you've done in school, and your education journey. It was very inspiring, and I appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you. It was an honor. And no pressure if there's no questions. All good. Okay.
Stop recording.